busy weeks, as you can imagine, but the week I'll be on Iona, two very exciting things are happening. One is the Scottish launch of the new book, and the other is Hebridean Treasure live in the Village Hall on the Wednesday.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So
Wonderful.
I've been showing the film of the production on Iona almost every time I'm there, but to have the live stage is going to be great. So my daughter will be there, and Ali will be there. And, yeah.
That is so special. I feel so honored that I'm going to be here on the island when these things happen. And
Yeah.
my job in volunteering is in the bookshop. So
Oh, I see.
they're flying like hotcakes off the shelves already. They really are.
Oh, that's great. Great. Good.
So thank you so much for joining us for this time. So you were with us with Alignment in a live session last year to talk about Sacred Earth, Sacred Soul, and people were just so deeply moved by getting to hear you talk about it in person, and people who had read it and who are devotees of your work, and also people who were brand new to this. And a lot of people who expressed to me that it gave them a sense of freedom and openness to address the things that have been really difficult for them in their faith.
Yeah.
And I feel as if the Great Search is even a deeper step into allowing that for people. So I'm so excited for the Alignment people who come on and for everyone to experience this. It's really beautiful and powerful.
Thank you.
I wanted to use this as my background. So although I'm not standing by the statue, I'm footsteps away from it almost. But the beginning of, or in the introduction, your story about this is so deeply moving and sets the tone for the entire work. And I was wondering if you would just share that story again of being with your friend.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that, Margaret. It was in the autumn of 2018 during a pilgrimage week on Iona. For many years now, I've been extremely close to Rabbi Nachum Wordlev from New Mexico. We've done a lot of teaching together, and when we first met, almost immediately we realized we were brothers, very much connected deep within ourselves, and we began to teach together. And I think I mentioned in the book that the first time we talked together, I heard Nachum saying to some of our participants, he said, "Now, when John Philip teaches, it comes out Christian, but it goes in Jewish."
Yes, I love that.
And that's exactly how I feel, when he teaches, that he feeds my my heart, and he feeds my devotion to Jesus. And why should that be surprising? I mean, historically, there's been such tragic division between our religious traditions often. But I believe that when they are being sort of deeply true to their essence, then they can feed people of different wisdom traditions, different spiritual traditions. So for years, I had been saying to Nachum, come to Iona. And he kept saying, "Oh, that would be lovely," and nothing was happening about it. So in 2018, I decided the way to get my rabbi to Iona was to create an award. So I awarded him from Earth and Soul as a teacher who has profoundly blessed me. And this award meant that he and his wife could come to Iona to be part of a pilgrimage week. And our pilgrimage weeks begin on a Saturday. So our first full day together was the Sunday. And I invited Nachum and Shelley, his wife, to come with me to the communion service in the Abbey on the Sunday. So there I was sitting with my rabbi and his wife, feeling so grateful for having them on Iona. But because they were beside me, I began to hear things in a different way. And I began to realize that even in this place of very progressive Christianity, things were being said that were offensive to not only the Jewish tradition, but to people of other traditions. And I think I've never come so close in my whole life to standing up halfway through the service and saying, "Stop! You're offending my brother. Don't speak this way." And I was also sort of asking myself, well, why don't I always hear this? Why don't I hear it this way? And I think if all of us could sit through a sort of typical service with someone from another tradition whom we deeply revere and respect, I think we would hear things differently. And certainly I did that Sunday morning. And at the end of the service, I felt I needed somehow to bring comfort to them, and but not knowing what to say or how to say it, I suddenly thought, why don't I take them out to the Lipschitz sculpture at the heart of the cloisters? This by this Jewish artist Jacques Lipschitz. And Jacques Lipschitz had been an artist in France, and during the Nazi occupation of his homeland, a Roman Catholic priest in France enabled him to escape from France and find sanctuary in America. And even in France, Lipschitz conceived the idea of this piece, which he called Our Lady of Delight. I know on Iona it tends to be referred to as the Descent of the Spirit, but that was sort of a renaming of it. And George MacLeod, I think, realized that Presbyterian Scotland wouldn't quite know what to do with Our Lady, and certainly wouldn't know what to do with Delight. Right. So it was sort of renamed the Descent of the Spirit. But it is this extraordinary piece of art, and I think of spiritual wisdom, because Lipschitz takes this central story, the story of the Christ child conceived in the womb of Mary by the Spirit, and he turns it into a cosmic statement. And it's a way of him saying that everything has been conceived in the womb of the universe by the Spirit. And the Christ mystery is not an exception to the mystery of humanity and earth. The Christ mystery is seen as a revelation that is disclosing that each of us is born of the Spirit within the womb of the universe. So I asked Nachum and Shelley if they would come to the sculpture because I felt that was what I wanted to share with them, but still thinking I needed somehow to comfort them. But when I opened my mouth, I began to weep, and all I could say was, I'm so ashamed. I'm ashamed of what has happened to my tradition. And I'm ashamed that that our tradition has been so often associated with a subordination of other wisdom traditions rather than a deep respecting of them and learning from them. So I had meant to comfort them. They took me in their arms and comforted me.
Mm.
And it was in that moment that I realized I must relinquish my ordination. I realized there's a profound disconnect between the main creedal statements and doctrines of Western Christianity formulated, from the 4th century onwards in this marriage between religion and empire that happened in the 4th century. And I realized that there was this profound disconnect between my religious inheritance from the 4th century onwards and what I'm trying to teach and what I'm trying to live, and that is the sacredness of earth and the sacredness of every human being. So it was a realization that for my own integrity as a teacher, I needed to relinquish my ordination. And I use the word relinquish because that's what I was thinking at the time. But not too long ago on Iona, a pilgrim had asked me to speak a little bit about my decision to relinquish ordination. Mm-hmm. And when I finished speaking to her about it, she said, "Oh, you've given your ordination back." And I think that's maybe a better way of putting it. It doesn't fit. It doesn't fit anymore.
It's really interesting.
So I needed to give it back. And I was very clear that that's what I needed to do. And Ali, my wife, wasn't with us at that moment, but she came up later in the week. And when she arrived, Nachum and Shelley and I spoke to her about what had happened and my realization. And Ali said, "Well, maybe that's what you should do, but give it a year. Give it a year." And that was wise advice. So, because at the time I still had some anger in me about what my religious tradition has become in terms of exclusivity often. And I want to be emphatic about not wanting to identify with that, but it was very important that I took a decision from a place of deep peace within myself as well. So after the year, I was even more clear that I needed to do this. And speaking the next day to Nachum a bit more about what had happened that day, he said, "John Philip, don't be worried about me. This is what I've been hearing from Christianity my entire life. So I wasn't particularly offended yesterday." And of course, that only made my decision even more emphatic, that this is what he's always experienced from Christianity, even from a relatively liberal or open place of Christian practice. So the other thing he said to me at the time, which I think was sort of prophetic, he said, "You may be feeling relieved about this decision," because that was the word I used on the very day afterwards. I said, "I'm feeling relieved." And he said, you may be feeling relieved now, but I think that in the months and years to come, you will be feeling more and more and more free. Oh. And I think that's truly my experience. By giving back my ordination, I in a sense am saying, I'm simply trying to speak from the human soul. Yeah. And I'm trying to speak into this moment in time. and into our relationship with earth, and the need to come back into true relationship with our depths made of God. And I don't have to do that through the lens of a particular hierarchy of truth that's been passed down over the centuries. And emphatically, I also want to say, I've not lost my faith. um, I saw the decision to give back my ordination as following my faith, and I have also very much wanted it not to be a statement of judgment on many of my brothers and sisters who continue to be ordained. This was not a judgment on them,
Right.
and I have a tremendous respect for what so many of them are doing, and I've become more aware over these past few years of a creative tension within our Judeo-Christian inheritance. And we find it even, within our scriptures. And that is a tension between the temple, as it were, and the wilderness, or the tension between the priestly and the prophetic. And I'm very much in the wilderness now. I'm in that sense, I'm trying to be true to the prophetic insights of our inheritance. But I think that the true prophetic voice always speaks with love for the family in the temple, as it were. The role of the prophet is not just to sound off from the wilderness. I think the true prophetic voice is calling for change precisely because it feels indebted to the family and feels that it's wanting change so that our tradition can truly be a blessing in the world.
And do you feel, as in the chapters that you've written about Rumi and Tagore, that release of ego in some way?
Yeah.
Write about so beautifully.
Yeah. Yeah, the struggle with the ego is always an individual one, but there's a collective ego as well. And I mean, think of the ego of our nation at times, or think of the ego of the human species, which tends to forget so often about other life forms. And I think that our religious traditions often have an enormous struggle with the collective ego of our religion, and so that is emphatically the case. That I think I see that, I feel it, I experience it more acutely, and it's been interesting because of course some people have felt threatened by my decision. Other people have deeply appreciated it in terms of indicating that they also can't stand by many of the sort of inherited creeds and doctrines of our tradition. And to those who feel threatened, I just have to keep trying to live in integrity within myself, and pray that people will understand that I've tried to do it out of an act of love, and I haven't done it primarily out of an act of judgment.
Let me ask you this. As we meet unexpected people on Iona, and we have the most wonderful conversations that you never would have thought you might be having. And I've had a really moving conversation with a young woman in these past few weeks volunteering here, who is a volunteer herself. And she has been raised Catholic. She has a beautiful life of prayer. She is a university student of theology. She is a deep questioner. And just in working with her here on the island, she was asking me, what should I read? What should I read? And then she said at one point, tell me more about Bridget. I want to know more about Bridget. And she is, she wants to study more about Mary in her work in theology. So I said, right, pick up this book, Sacred Earth, Sacred Soul, skip to this chapter first and then go back and read the whole thing. Well, she devoured it. And I've told her, okay, her next step is to read The Great Search now, because you're going to move from that into an expanse into other traditions and a deeper understanding of this connection. But I'm wondering what you would say to this young woman who is feeling deeply held back now by her own tradition, that she as a woman is to be subordinate in her position of leadership. And her fellow students that she's studying theology with, who are saying to her she will never have the positions that they will have as men, being true to her tradition. And she does not want to leave her tradition. So would you invite her into that space of relinquishing her particular tradition, or give her the armor for the challenging work to change from within a tradition that she loves deeply?
Yeah. Yeah, a really important question, and I think one that so many are in the midst of today. And in my work in different parts of the world, I must say that the group that has most deeply impressed me within our Christian larger community is many of the women's religious orders within Catholicism. These are often wise women who are passionate about care of earth and passionate about a true spiritual rootedness in their lives and what they're longing for other people. And one of the things that I've seen in them is that they don't believe that their orders have any right to perpetuity. We only have a right to continue, I believe, in religious traditions and religious orders and expressions of our religious inheritance, if we are being a blessing to earth and to humanity at this moment in time. So I see many of them sitting very lightly to many of the details of the religious tradition that they began in, and many of them are faithfully continuing in. But it took me quite a while in many of these religious sisterhoods, when I was with them on a Sunday, for instance, it took me a while to realize there's no mass happening here, and that is for two reasons. One is because they can't tolerate the language of the Mass, which often sort of points to a sense of substitutionary atonement on the cross, that God somehow needs to be paid to blood sacrifice in order to forgive us. So they can't tolerate the language and the theology of the Mass. But also they're not willing to have to bring in a man to do it. It's not that they're against men, and I'm being invited as a man to be present in religious communities and to teach. It's that they're fundamentally opposed to this hierarchy of men within their system. And then, of course, I meet other women who have said, uh, I so much cannot tolerate this that I need now to work in the wilderness. I need to leave my religious order.
Mm.
Um, so I think each one of us needs to be making this decision. Do we try to stay within the temple? Do we try to stay within the four walls of our tradition and bring change there? And in the case of this young woman, it would mean working in a way that didn't fully celebrate her as a woman. Or do we leave and do we work very much out on the edge and try to be part of a prophetic call for change more from the outside? And I believe very passionately that we need one another. We need the prophetic voice on the outside, and we also need people trying to work within the four walls and committed to bringing change from the inside. But it's very much a decision that I think needs to be taken as individuals.
Right.
And I mean, one of the reasons why it's so important that we work together, both from the wilderness and the temple, as it were, because we're not just talking about the survival of religion, we're actually speaking about the survival of the world
Yes.
as we know it. This is how urgent this moment in time is. If we do not come back into true relationship with Earth, if we do not come back into true relationship with the sacredness at the heart of every person, then the world as we know it is moving to utter disaster. And so the one thing is to be thinking about how we serve our religious inheritance most effectively. And the bigger question is, how do we serve the world?
I love how you bring forward Thomas Berry's understandings of moving from justice for humanity to justice for every life form. And then even farther, I think when you move into the Nan Shepherd chapter, it seems to move even beyond every life form to every form of creation, the mountain, the
Yeah,
rocks themselves, right?
yeah,
And
that's right. Yeah.
yeah,
Yes, no, I mean, it's absurd, this distinction that we've tried to make between humanity and the rest of Earth. And this is one of the reasons why someone like Thomas Berry is saying we're living in a moment of grace, and despite the enormous challenges of this moment in time, he sees it as a moment of grace because we're being given a way of seeing that reminds us of the interrelatedness of all things, not just humanity and all life forms, but humanity and the whole body of Earth and the whole body of the universe. And this is a way of seeing that can richly serve the work of transformation that we're all called to be part of. And Thomas Berry is again and again very true to his prophetic calling, because he says this is a moment of grace. We're being given a way of seeing that could play an enormous part in transformation. And he goes on to say, but moments of grace are transient. In other words, will we meet this moment? Will we live into this way of seeing, or will we miss this moment? And let's be clear that we're on course for missing this moment.
You may be interested to hear that the reading last week during the service for justice and peace on Monday night was from the Guru Granth Sahib, the first verses of the sacred scripture of Sikhism, and the first words, Ik Onkar, that all things are one. I was thinking so much of this, of your work, The Great Search, which has woven throughout it this understanding that all things are one, that we are one with all forms of creation and one with the divine, and just such a beautiful message. And to think that I was sitting in Iona Abbey and hearing the words of the Guru Granth Sahib read.
Yeah.
It's really powerful.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I remember years ago when Ellie and I were the wardens of the Abbey, we had an imam up from London for a sort of interspiritual, interfaith week, and he offered the call to prayer, the Muslim call to prayer in the Abbey. And my experience of it was this. I mean, this is probably the first time it's ever happened here, but it belongs here. It felt, yeah, you know, of course we should be hearing these words here.
It feels like a call home, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's you know, that's one of the points I try to make in the conclusion of the Great Search, that that we're being invited to see that our center is very much at the heart of our being and deep within Earth and every life form, and that we should not see our center, you know, primarily as Rome or Jerusalem or Mecca or these places that have been significant in our histories, but let's remember that these great places exist to serve the real center, which is Earth, and which is the sacredness at the heart of every human being, and it's not the other way around. And I think it's that sort of reorientation that we're in the midst of, and we're being invited to act on that realization. And I think to the extent that we do, we're going to see some wonderful transformations within our inheritances.
Exciting. And you weave so beautifully biographies of these powerful voices with autobiography and sharing your own journey and story, and now the Great Search, which is opening up voices beyond the Christian tradition, and I cannot wait to see what is next we're going to offer us, because you really support and pave the way for us whose hearts and minds search for God in a much wider capacity than perhaps we have trained to see.
Yeah.
So, thank
you. Well, I really believe in the sort of biographical way of teaching. I was blessed as a theology student in Edinburgh to have a very gracious, gentle man as the professor of ecclesiastical history, Alec Chain, his name was. And he taught very much through this sort of biographical method, taking great figures in the history of Christianity and telling their lives, and through their lives imparting the wisdom that they had to offer us. And we'd sort of be up on the edge of our seats listening to the story. And then the bell would go to end the class, and many of us would think, oh no, don't stop, and couldn't wait to get back for the rest of the story. And so I'm often aware of much he influenced me to do this sort of weaving of the telling of a life story, and then seeing how the wisdom comes through the events and the details and challenges and disappointments of the life story. And on Iona a number of years ago, at the end of one of our pilgrimage weeks, I often invite pilgrims at the end of the week to offer one word as an expression of gratitude for what's been happening. And on the week that I'm remembering, one of the pilgrims was a Buddhist gentleman, and he was there. His wife is Christian, and they were there together. And when we got round to him, the word that he offered was transmission. And this is a very important word, within the Buddhist tradition, because the teacher is not a teacher is not seen as an original fount of wisdom. The role of the teacher is to transmit wisdom from those who have gone before us, and to distill that wisdom and to try to speak it in a new way for now. And when I heard his word transmission, I thought that, yeah, absolutely, that's what I so believe in, and I so want to do that. And so at this point in my life, I've really found what I believe I should be doing, and that is to transmit. And one of the great blessings in it for me, of course, when I work on a book like The Great Search with 9 chapters, 9 great teachers, is that when I'm working on the book, I'm being extremely well fed by some of the greatest spiritual thinkers of all time. And so that means that there's more chance that the book will be a blessing for others as well, if I'm being so blessed. But it really works for me because I find myself so fed, and I think not to inflate myself at all, but I think that I have a gift of being able to distill, and this is a gift I want to use for others.
Well, keep going.
Thank you.
This one's a treasure, and as always, we look forward to the next. And
Thank you.
speaking of biography writing, I ran into dear Ron Ferguson yesterday on the
Oh, did you?
by the water, and he sends his greetings and his love.
How beautiful. I'm so glad he's there.
And he said that he writes every day.
Really?
That he will always do so. He will always.
Yeah. I can believe that. Sometimes people say to me, "Thank you so much for writing." And part of me always feels, well, I'm glad that the writing has been helpful, but I need to do it for my own soul. And
practice.
And I think that's really beautiful to hear that Ron said that. Yeah, he's his biography of George MacLeod was just so rich, so deep, and it brought, I think it helped bring some real perspective within the unfolding life of the Iona community as well. And it's really important to remember these deep Celtic roots in George MacLeod. I think that it's such an essential part of his vision, and to root the passion for justice and passion for peace in a deep spirituality.
Well, I was Quaker educated, so as Fox said, let your lives speak.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed.
Let your lives speak, and you are letting other people's lives speak and your own life speak. And I'm one of those people that says thank you. So grateful. So grateful for what you give us.
It's really lovely to see you, and lovely to see you in the cloister. I mean, I know that you're not in the cloisters, but because I think that first story you told me when we first chatted was about coming to the Abbey, wasn't it? And staying in the George MacLeod room just off the cloisters, wasn't it?
Yeah, and he put his hand on one of the stones back here. It's actually right there. And he said to me, this is one of the stones your dad put in. He said, you know how I know that? Because it's crooked.
Yeah, he was always such a laugh.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, you be well, and we'll see you here on the island shortly.
Yes, it won't be long. I'm so delighted. I mean, when I heard that you were on the island, I was very pleased for you, but I didn't realize I was going to get to see you there. So that's lovely.
Yeah, I can't
Okay.
wait. Thank you so much.